Welcome back. Getting hay cut and baled in a timely way was a challenge this year for many cattlemen as cooler, wetter weather impacted days in the field and also drying times. Still, many producers reported a banner year for hay production. Now, the question is whether the hay is stored well enough to avoid damage and deterioration. More on the critical importance of hay storage from Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Brian Baxter.
For a cattleman, it's a good feeling to head into winter with plenty of hay on hand, but the size of the supply is not the best indicator of feed value.
Hay quality is real important. Just because you have a roll of hay doesn't mean you have quality feed. I would tell anybody that the best thing to do is to get you a bale sample if you're buying any hay. We check our hay protein to make sure it's good, therefore we know what we need to do with our supplements of mineral or lick feed to go along with our hay. That's very important. You can have many tons of hay and not have anything if you don't have any quality.
Dan Taylor has a commercial cow herd in South Georgia and produces hay for his own use and for customers. Dan's hay is typically stored outside, so it is subject to weather. And for all those storing hay, climate is a big factor to consider.
So really when we talk about climate type, we're specifically talking about annual rainfall. And so depending on what part of the country you're in, generally speaking, most cattlemen probably fall, particularly in the east and Midwest, in the 20 to 40 inches of rainfall per year, which means that they're going to have some pretty adverse effects on dry matter loss in their bales. They're going to see a lot of dry matter loss out over time, which is going to equate to less hay or less feed in the bale.
Producers in areas where rainfall might be under 10 inches per year have less to worry about in terms of weather-related losses to their stored hay. But for those in higher moisture areas, dry matter loss due to weather can be as high as 25 to 50%. So what are the keys to protecting the dry matter and quality of stored hay? First is bale density.
When we talk about bale density, there's a difference between a low density bale and a high density bale. We typically look for that density value to be around 10 pounds per cubic foot, which means that that bale will have the ability to shed water a little better and hold up to more moves a little better as well, depending on how many times cattlemen are moving it before they're feeding the bale.
Bale density is important for several reasons. Number one is, if the bale is dense, then there are fewer bales being made in the field. So the fewer the bales there are being made in the field, there are fewer bales there are to retrieve and to tie and to put twine on. So it actually reduces the cost for the operator. Secondly, if the bale is dense, then it's going to be able to weather less if it's left outside. So that means it sheds water better, and that's also important. If it weathers less, then you can keep more of the nutritional value of the plant that you've cut and packaged.
The BR 7000 series round baler from New Holland can help cattlemen achieve high-density bales for lower storage losses.
The New Holland baler will make a dense bale because of the roll belt concept that it was designed with. And that is, first of all, it has a combination of belts and rollers. The two top rollers are on a sledge arm that pivots forward as the core size grows, but there's tremendous pressure underneath that material, and it's going to make a dense bale. And then the hydraulic pressure is going to take over when the belts have control of the bale during the last 2/3 of the formation of the package itself. And the operator can control the density by changing the density control there on his valve on the hydraulics. With a combination of rollers and belts, we have the densest bale in the baler industry.
The dense uniform bales produced by the New Holland 7000 series of roll belt round balers is a result of several design factors, including the ability for the operator to dial in the bale density desired.
So the take-up arms can actually move because oil is in this cylinder right here. This is a self-contained system. We're not getting hydraulic oil from the tractor. You know, the beauty of that is if you borrow your neighbor's tractor and his has got contaminated oil, it won't hurt your baler. That's what's so neat about this. So the oil has got to flow in one end of the cylinder and come back out the other. This is just a block valve right here that dictates how hard it is for that oil to make its journey. And you can change the density by restricting how hard it is for these take-up arms to move by rotating this right here. Turn it one way to make a denser bale, turn it the opposite way to make a little less dense bale. And that's the great thing about the take-up arms, and that's how that works. The hydraulic density system also includes a gauge at the front of the baler, and you can see here, and it's in numerical values there with the PSI. So if you raise the tailgate and you're at, say, 2100 PSI and that's too dense, and you can crank back, dial back on it and have one at less. And you know, you can also document what you made the bale at. If you made bales that you liked at 1600 PSI, you don't have to know what color they were in, you just know it was at 1600. So that's what's so neat about that gauge.
After bale density, another factor to consider in maintaining hay quality is using net wrap instead of twine.
When we use the twine, our quality would be the same except for the waste that we would have on the outside of the bale. It would go to rotting more so on the bottom and top. But being that we use the wrap, it keeps the bale more uniform, so there's less of the bale actually sitting on the ground.
Well, the major difference between wrapping with net and twine is the ability of the bale to shed water. Bales that are wrapped with net are going to be able to do two things. Number one, they're going to shed water from the sky a lot better than twine will. And the second thing is they will wick less water up from the ground. Because when bales are sitting on the ground, that ground is really like a sponge that absorbs water, and that bale will absorb some of that water as well. So bales stored on the ground will weather better with net versus twine in mostly all conditions.
Our bales are stored outside. We do not have enough shelter room for all of it. If we had our spring, the amount of rain that we had this spring would have been devastating if we'd had not been using our wrap.
Here's the net spool. We call this the front-loaded net spool. You know, when you're making hay, it just comes natural to want to look back and see how you're doing. And it's the same way when you're putting your string or twine on, even the netting too. So we've put the net spool at the front so that the operator can look back and see that the net spool is actually engaged and doing its job. Another thing that's neat about this is the netting itself doesn't have far to travel until it lands where it's going to live on the face of the bale. So it's fast and it's easy to load, and you load from the front and it's easy to see. You can look through these holes here in the front and know when it's rotating.
In addition to preserving the quality of stored bales, the net wrap system on the BR 7000 series of balers also allows producers to get their hay baled and out of the field more quickly.
Advantages of the net wrap, first and foremost, it's time. Usually when people think about should I net or should I twine, you get into a quick discussion about the fact that netting is a lot more productive because it takes so much less time. And a fellow who may be using twine or string may take a minute and 15, a minute and 30 seconds to tie and to dump the bale, whereas the guy with the net mechanism may take 12 to 16 seconds. So it's a lot faster. If it's a lot faster over the course of a 7 or 8 hour day, it can mean that you can put up a lot more bales.
From climate to bale density to net wrap, the factors influencing hay quality and storage can now be easily compared using decision-making tools from New Holland, a bale storage slide calculator or a new bale wrap application for use on a tablet.
We offer both a paper copy version of a bale storage loss calculator in addition to a bale wrap app where cattlemen can put in their own values for their operation and calculate what their potential dry matter loss is and tons saved using net wrap and particular storage types. For example, if today I'm wrapping with net but storing my bales on the ground, I can compare that to perhaps storing my bales on a crushed rock pad covered with a tarp, or maybe just covered with a tarp on the ground to compare my dry matter losses and what savings I might see per ton by switching up a couple of my practices if I'm storing my bales for 6 to 12 months. So both of those tools are available to producers to evaluate what's best for them so that they can get the most out of the hay that they've got stored.
And getting the most out of the hay you've stored can make all the difference when it comes to keeping your cattle and your balance sheet in good condition through the feeding season. From South Georgia, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
You can get your own free copy of the Bale Storage Slide Calculator. It's a handy reference tool, and you can get your own copy from New Holland Agriculture simply by calling toll-free 1-888-346-6910 right now. And don't forget, you can also download the New Holland Bale Wrap application. Just visit Google Play or iTunes and search for Bale Wrap app to download a version for your own tablet.